very important issue indeed. The workshop has been titled Right to Information as a Tool for Social Accountability. My name is Bernard Able. I work at CTFM, but I'm also the subject area specialist for media. And we're very happy to have a good mix of media and CSO people here to be part of the program. I want to do a quick round of introductions, and then we'll receive a proper welcome from our convener, in many ways who our convener is. Now, we're very happy to have on my immediate left, Dr. May. Let's acknowledge him now. To his left is the Honorable Minister for Information. He's also a Member of Parliament from Boku Central, Honorable Mahama Yarga, who's our special guest. And to his left is our chairman. Our chairman is, for me, one of the most complete public figures I know. Professor Michael Kwe is not only a former Deputy Speaker of Parliament and a former MP for my constituency for many years, but he's also a lawyer, political science professor, a priest, which means he interacts with God, interacts with men, and he's a former student of my old school, Presec, as well. These days, he is the executive director of the APPI. So even in retirement, he still engages civil society. APPI is the Africa Public Policy Institute, which was launched a couple of months ago. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for our chairman. Before our chairman responds to the introduction, just a quick introduction of our speakers. As I indicated, we have four main speakers. The first speaker, she says, but we have three other speakers. First, we have Mr. Victor Brobe. He's a research fellow for legal and governance at Ghana CDD and also teaches at GEMPA. Mr. Victor Brobe will give us a paper. Let's put hands together for him. They want to see you. The Executive Secretary of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, Mrs. Florence Dennis, she will be presenting a paper as well. We have a media academic, Dr. H.C. Kampu from the University of Iowa. He will be presenting a paper. Mina Mensa, who I will introduce when she gets here properly, will join us. Let's quickly receive Dr. Robert Osei. But before that, I believe our chairman will just say a few things to accept the chairmanship honor we've given him. Prof, you don't really need to come here. I'll bring the mic to you. Or do you want to come here?
No,
yes, I'll bring the mic to you. Put your hands together for Mr. Michael, please.
Since you have a mic that can move. So, you may well be the mountain of good Muhammad. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I accept this invitation with gladness. Over a year ago, I happened to have moderated on the campus of the IEA a similar conference for members of parliament at Makuzumu. And I love to describe this particular effort as a law that has more exemptions than rules. Maybe we shall be able to remove some of the exceptions and the circumstances in which one will not exclude information, so that we shall have a clean slate. If we do so, I believe we will have done some good job and come to some good understanding. We should be able to marry the naturally security interests of every state with also the right to information and the need to be transparent. But how do you best do this? And we cannot forget that we live in very different circumstances from the US, for example, where even there have been a lot of difficulties. And I believe this should be a learning session for all of us, me being the first to learn. And I trust that at the end of it, we have found it very useful. I'll make some more comments at the end. So I should be going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, Ms. Maja Daruwala, and she'll share some India-specific experiences with us. But let's receive the EGN coordinator, Senior Research Fellow at ISSER, Dr. Robert Osei, to give us our official welcome. Oh, please clap for him.
Thank you very much. You know, you've come to my home and then you said all you've got to say, and then you say I should give you a welcome. But thank you anyway. It's my junior brother, so it's fine. Thank you very much. Once again, good morning. My name is Robert Osei. I'm a senior research fellow here at ISSER and also the head of economics at ISSER, which is the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research. And I happen to be the coordinator for the Economy of Ghana Network. Now, just a little background of the Economy of Ghana Network, just for those who do not know the network properly or the history of the network. The Economy of Ghana Network isn't something new here in Ghana. It is essentially a platform to engage in dialogue or have dialogue relating to issues that will improve the well-being of the Ghanaians. So essentially, it's supposed to be an e-based platform which should help us to dialogue between researchers, policymakers, and what I say, the everyday users of, or everyday practitioners of economics, okay, which is you and I. It actually started in 2005. It was supposed to be, or it did last for 3 years. It did make quite some inroads in terms of discussions related to the economy of Ghana. However, the main purpose of it, which was to try and then engage in discussions based on the e-platform, didn't really take off. And there were a number of reasons for that. So we've done the reviews of what went right, what did not go right with respect to that particular objective. And then it was relaunched in 2008. Well, 2008 we started planning again towards it. And essentially it kick-started in 2011. It has 12 subject areas, or thematic subject areas, with each area having a subject matter specialist that convenes the discussions relating to their particular area. So you have development politics. My good friend, Mr. Kwasidona, is the subject matter specialist. Our host, co-host, is in charge of media relations. You have development economics, you have macroeconomics, you have agriculture economics, social policy, all facets or areas that relate to improving the well-being of the Ghanaian have a subject matter area. Okay, and so you can essentially situate any issue relating to improving the well-being of the Ghanaian in one of the subject matter areas. Now, what typically will be taking place, of course, we will be organizing, and we have been organizing some of these physical workshops where we bring people, eminent people, like the Honorable Minister, the Honorable Professor Reverend Mike Okwe, and others to share the ideas, right? But we will not only be meeting physically, we will also be meeting virtually. Okay, so we have created a platform where we can actually engage in discussions. Now, of course, today we are going to be talking about a very interesting issue, the right to information as a tool for social accountability. But tomorrow, you may have a flash of inspiration and then decide that there is an issue that you want to speak about or have people discuss in, say, development politics. So you can always send either the EGN Secretariat an email, or you can go to the EGN website www.egn.Ghana egn.org.gh. Okay. And then you can then send us an email about any issue that relates to the economy of Ghana. Of course, the use of the platform is for everyone. Insofar as you can get around in you are comfortable using the internet, you can go there, register, and then engage. And you can register for all the subject matter areas. So you don't have to be restricted to development politics or culture economics or media relations. You can actually engage in any of the different thematic areas. The only catch there is that we have some rules, and so of course, I mean, you can't go there and then start a political, quote-unquote, issue. We don't do politics there. Okay, so there are some etiquettes that guide the use of the website. But other than that, please, we are encouraging all of us. We are going to be doing a lot more, and we are trying to do a lot more discussion on the e-platform than we will be doing in this manner. Now, I've spoken for too long. My project manager is looking at me sternly, which means that I shouldn't do my thing here. So, on that note, I would again like to welcome you all to this very, very interesting, I believe, discussion that we are going to have this morning. So, thank you all, and we're on
the history, or what my friend called the historicity of the event. So even though Mina is not in, Victor probably would start his presentation, and what he would do is he would give us some background to give us the same, or all about the same page. Now Victor is a research fellow in governance and legal policy at CDD, Center for Democratic Development. He lectures at Dimpa School of Law, where he teaches constitutional and administrative law. Over the last few years, he's been engaged in teaching and research on various aspects of governance in Ghana, including constitutional reform and reforms to key governance institutions in Ghana. He practices law at the Law Office of Ayine and Biko, and he is a proud graduate of this same university. Ladies and gentlemen, Victor Brobe will be presenting a paper on the implications of the RTI law for good governance and social accountability. Victor.
Thanks very much, Bernard, for the introduction. And let me thank ISSER for basically having us here today. I mean, it's my first time at ISSER, and it's my first time in this building, and I really get a chance to do things at my alma mater. I'm also somewhat intimidated by the fact that I was taught the politics of Ghana by the chairman a long time ago. A long time ago. In addition to that, our special guest of honor was my senior at the Faculty of Law in the 90s, and where he often used to give me very good advice. I could go to him and ask him which elective should I choose, and the idea being to get the easiest possible elective and the highest possible grade. As he was a year ahead of me, he knew the lecturers better than I did, and he'll tell me, this lecturer, if you take this class, your A- is guaranteed, but that lecturer, don't go near. I'm a research fellow at the Center for Democratic Development. We are a governance and public policy think tank based in Accra. We are a CSO. So this is an area that is of tremendous importance to us, obviously for selfish reasons. Because if you are a CSO that does governance research, information really is your stock in trade. And you are interested in anything that would make information easier to get. And you would be against anything that makes information or that put obstacles in the way of receiving information. So we started talking about this issue as far back as 1999, when it was not as, can I say, fashionable as it is now. Back then, we did a few research papers, one authored by Professor Kofi Kumado, one authored by Professor John Wade himself, trying to make the case for the passage of access to information, for an access to information law. And ultimately, we joined with other organizations such as the Media Foundation for West Africa and CHRI and other institutions that were interested in this topic to begin the right to information. And she can go in far more detail about the RTI provision than I can. But suffice it to say that by 2003, we had a draft bill on RTI in place, and the bill has been doing what bills sometimes do in Ghana. So sort of going through the motions, through Parliament, through public hearings, through Cabinet, through the Attorney General's office. It's yet to be passed. I'm not going to comment on its state because we have the Minister of Information here present, and I'm sure he has far more information about the present state of this particular law than I do. But there's always been, at least ostensible, strong bipartisan support for this for access to information legislation. Both parties have had it as a key legislative goal in their manifestos on multiple occasions by both parties, I mean both major parties and their minor parties have also had it as a legislative goal. Far back as 1999, we had a governmental endorsement of access to information legislation when the then Minister of Information said in really the first major conference on the topic that was organized that Ghana is presently encumbered by conflicting legislation in respect of provisions and access to information, against the Official Secrets Act, Global Secrets Regulations, in contrast with the more liberal constitutional provisions about put public officers in a situation where they are unsure how to proceed in response to requests for information from the public. This is the Information Minister speaking in 1999 as the keynote speaker of which he at a conference that was organized on this topic. Fortunately, the Information Minister then has evolved today to being the President of Ghana, and there's clear indications, at least from his words, that he's still interested in this issue and still interested in getting this bill passed, and we hope that we pass sooner rather than later. But the arguments for this law is obvious. Basically, to help liberate the media, as will be discussed by other speakers, to help enhance the quality of journalism, but certainly, as far as governance is concerned, to help to discipline the government by checking the executive power. We have a governance structure which, by almost every account, places far too much power in the executive. Our executive is nowhere near as accountable as it needs to be to a citizen. And a number of things need to be done to address this. And those things are largely constitutional in nature. But one of the things that can be done in the medium term to address this issue is to pass access to information law and basically put in place statutes that improve the level of openness and transparency in government. This is one way, one intermediate step that we can put in place to solve the problem of the executive leviathan that we have in this country. So the idea here is also to impose a duty on public officials and the government to also maintain documentation policies and ensure that the actions that are taken by our public officials are known to the people that they are ruling. Ultimately, the argument for this law is an openness and transparency argument. And this, you can see this from the famous quote by Brandeis. The sunlight is set with the best disinfectants, the electric light was an efficient policeman. The more we have access to information, the less likely that the things that my co-panelist, Ms. Dennis, is concerned about corruption is likely to occur. It just sheds the light, along with laws such as asset declaration laws, for example. Laws such as whistleblower laws. Those kinds of laws are laws that basically encourage openness and transparency in government, and they are vital for the success of any democracy. Access to information law typically goes hand in hand with laws that support and promote freedom of expression. We've done a really good job of promoting freedom of expression in this country since 1992. We've really come a long way from what pertained for 1992 to what pertains today, where we have an open and vibrant media. And the two rights, the freedom of expression right and the access to information right, tend to work hand in hand. It's somewhat ironic that we've done very well on one right, but nowhere near as well on the other. And hopefully, this is something that is going to be addressed as we go forward. The obvious question that needs to be asked, or that presents itself by the topic, is: are our public institutions, our governmental departments and agencies, our parliaments even, are they transparent enough? And I think that the obvious answer really is no. And I'm not saying this out of anecdotal evidence. There's some empirical support for the claim that our public agencies are nowhere near as transparent as they could be. Various agencies, various organizations, other CSOs, Media Foundation West Africa, the Carter Center, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, have all done research on the level of openness and transparency that exists in Ghana. And they have all shown that there are serious challenges in this area that can be addressed by, amongst other things, an access to information law. One recent piece of research that we did at CDD, which I'm going to describe to you very, very briefly, just sought to do a comparative analysis of openness and transparency in Ghana, Uganda, and South Africa broadly, and also in certain specific areas in the land sector, in the environmental sector, in the petroleum sector, and in the mineral and mining sector. And another object of this research was also to test the workability of the Access to Information Bill. So we essentially set up a little experiment where we had certain categories of persons make requests from the sector agencies that govern the fields of the economy that I just mentioned, essentially the land sector, the petroleum sector, the mining sector, and the environmental sector. An ordinary person who would describe herself variously as a student or as a housewife or as an indigene of a particular area, just requesting for certain types of information. And they were asking for all manner of things, both processes, information that had been gathered by the various agencies on various things that they did. And they tried to the greatest extent possible to follow what was actually in the current version of the ATI bill. So if you look at the ATI bill, section 19, it talks about what you need to do to get information from public agencies. It has to be in writing, the information you're asking for has to be sufficiently described, you have to show how you want the information, and you have to show what you want to do with the information essentially. We followed all that, and we essentially made information requests to a number of agencies in the land, in the environmental, petroleum, and mining sector. The bill says that you have to give 21 days for the agency to respond when you make the request to them. If there was no response after that, we considered essentially that it was essentially a refusal, and we submitted basically 12 requests to each agency. With the exception of the environmental protection agency that only collects claims. It's not a scientific study by any definition. It just indicates a certain trend as far as information access is concerned. For a proper scientific study, it has to be an end of at least 250, and we have to have much more controls about the information that we are asking for, when, who goes, etc. So this is not a scientific study, but it was still a useful exercise because we found that the problem that we have as far as information access is concerned is fairly serious. Of the 47 requests that we made, we got 14 grants and 33 refusals. Of the refusals, 10 were essentially constructive refusals. That is, they didn't say they were not going to give us the information, but from the conduct, it was clear that this information was not going to come at all. So the evidence is there that we have issues in this area. And if you break down the results by category of person, one of the categories that was the least successful in getting any sort of responses from the agencies that they were sent to were the journalists, which is unfortunate for all manner of reasons, but for reasons that I'll try to explain later, perhaps not surprising. The other category that suffered a little bit more was the ordinary person, or the person who described himself or herself. He's not given a clear enough reason for asking for the information beyond stating that I'm an ordinary person and that was generally not forthcoming. You tended to have a good reason for getting the information before you got any sort of response. And if you look at the breakdown by, say, subject matter, the worst response we found was in the land sectors, and also to some extent with the petroleum sectors. But as you can see, the results across all the sectors were fairly uniform. The land sector developed as it could be. So occasionally, it wasn't that they didn't want to give us the information that we're asking for. It was just that the information is not kept well enough for the sector individuals to respond quickly to information demands that have been made. But there's clearly something of a fear of transparency or disinformation, and one wonders why that could be. I mean, we can basically only speculate. One potential reason is that we are still a new democracy. We spent, at least until 1992, we spent most of our years under military regimes and under one-party regimes, much more so under regimes of that description than under regimes that were sort of open, liberal, democratic. And basically, the public services culture towards granting information was formed in these years. An almost reflexive, almost automatic approach to information that first thing to do is to say no. The potential for generally disinclined, public sector officials generally disinclined to give out information. That was certainly the case in the past and is still the case today. Unfortunately, these fears about greater openness and greater transparency are reinforced by a number of statutes that are holdovers from the period of our past where we were less democratic that really do not promote openness and transparency. And there are many such statutes, our State Secrets Act, our Civil Service Act, our Oath, etc., all of which criminalize giving out information without clearly defining what amounts to information that one can give out and information that one essentially should remain. In the various sectors that we looked at, in the land sector, in the minerals and mining sector especially, to some extent in the petroleum sector, but we've done actually much better in the petroleum sector. The petroleum sector is probably, as far as statutes are concerned, probably the most open sector and the most pro-information access sector that currently exists. Far more so than, say, the land sector, far more so than the minerals and mining sector, which for us, from the research that we've done, is clearly the sector in which information access provisions need to be really introduced. But in addition to that, we identified from the various pieces of research that we did that part of the reason for the disinclination for public officials to pass, to give out information, and also part of the reason why we believe that successive governments have not been as enthusiastic as they should in passing access to information law is the fear of the media. So it's interesting that this one leg of openness and transparency, freedom of expression, is actually serving as a restraint on the other leg, which is access to information. There's a fear that if you pass an access to information law, it may be used essentially by media houses, some of which are somewhat partisan in their outlook, to embarrass individuals, to embarrass governments, etc. So there is among certain persons in officialdom, this reluctance for us, generally public officials are, especially parliamentarians, are always reluctant to admit this. But I think there is enough evidence of this from past actions to make that a somewhat undeniable conclusion. And of course, we have, and we don't have the best information management culture in this country, even though certain sectors, but again, the land sector, and I'm trying to pick on the land sector, has an information culture that could clearly be improved. The question, of course, is, will an ATI law cure these ills? Well, there's some evidence for this. The ATI provisions generally are more progressive than what pertains, even the bill that we have issues with have provisions that are generally more progressive than what pertains in